Hello everyone, for today's video I need all of you to travel back with me in time to the distant, ancient year of 2013. Because in that year, Ubisoft was still not complete shit. They were already milking their franchises, yes, Assassin's Creed 4, which was actually, the 6th or 7th Assassin's Creed game was released in 2013, but even so, they still had some moral qualms about selling their soul to the devil. So they decided the smart way to milk their franchises was to keep releasing them while giving some actual value to the people purchasing their games. Enter their mini-shooters, two games released in the same month, namely May of 2013. Those games were smaller and shorter than the games preceding them in their respective series, but they were also cheaper to buy and, most importantly, cheaper to make, since they were built on the skeleton of already existing engines or even entire games. But their cheaper budget meant that they could be something different, that developers could take more risks with them, and the consumer in the end would get an appetizer for their franchise before eating a main course should they eventually take the plunge. I honestly thought at the time that this was going to be the future for AAA studios, making smaller budget games to test the waters and maybe please some hardcore fans, as well, as to attract those that want something new but don't have quite the budget themselves to spend on full-blown AAA games. Naturally, I was wrong. And Ubisoft eventually completely abandoned the indie market in search of the ever-elusive microtransaction bugs, and repeating the same mistakes over and over again, but I digress, because even if we did not get much, we still got two bite-sized experiences that are a whole lot of more fun than some AAA big-budget games that are today, and indeed even were back in the day they were released, and the good news is, both games are still widely available today in online stores, including one who got a Nintendo Switch re-release, so you can still pick them up today if you feel like it. So let us get right into it and talk about Ubisoft's mini-shooters.
Game over, yeah!
Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon is the first of the two games I want to talk about today. Released May 1st on PC and Xbox 360, though if you were on the PS3 and on North America, you got it one day earlier than literally everybody else in the globe or on other platforms for some reason. Well, it is a standalone expansion to Far Cry 3, which is just a fancy way of saying that they reused the engine and assets from that game in this one, and you can tell from the title that they wanted to make it perfectly clear that this is an expansion to Far Cry 3, so people would be sure it is a new spin on the explosively popular third game and not the other two games that were pretty good but didn't sell as much as the third one. But enough about sales. This far into the game, sales don't matter to us. What matters is what the actual game is about. And well, it is a parody of 80s action movies, only taking out the crazy stuff and pumping it up to 11. The game stars Sergeant Rex Power Coat, half man, half machine, all-American hero, who is sent to investigate an island only to find out his former commander has gone rogue and kidnapped several scientists in true madman fashion to fire out missiles all over the world filled with the blood of the blood dragons, which he also drank, which gave him immense power and insanity. Are you following so far? Well, honestly, if you didn't, who can blame you? It's 80s as hell, though not necessarily realistic 80s media. Sure, it is about 80s media, especially B-movies, and those were really crazy in the 80s, but this game's vision is more like the 80s on cocaine, by which I mean even more cocaine than usual. Everything is always dark so that every building can have neon strips all over it, your own shots are bright neon colored lasers and everything explodes while you rip the heart out of your enemies for currency, and then they are the cutscenes. Hot damn the cutscenes. Rather than give us proper 3D in-game ones, they decided to animate all of them in this stilted old school 2D sprite art style to homage not only the movies but culture from the 80s and video games as well. All of this is one mashup together, or well, at least how we remember them. Most games, even in the arcades, would only reach graphics of this level in the 90s, but don't let that take away from how awesome the cutscenes are. The gameplay itself is just Far Cry 3. You shoot people, you hide, you do takedowns, and if enemies are nearby, you can do multiple takedowns in a single sequence. The main difference is that there is no upgrade system where you must select what skills you want manually. Instead, you just get them automatically as you level up. And that also you begin the game with stuff like the multiple takedown unlocked by default compared to the base Far Cry 3 game, which makes for a much smoother experience. But at its core, it's still the same basic game, with the same basic mechanics and weapons and enemy AI that are all copied straight from Far Cry 3, just with different visuals. The outposts you can clear from any direction using any tools that you have also return, as well as some generic side quests, collectibles, and animals to kill littering the map in every way possible, though just like in the original game, they stopped being interesting long before you reached 100% completion. It's not all bad though, since some of Far Cry 3 systems are used in completely new ways in order to enhance the craziness. The titular blood dragons are living fossils of dinosaurs from ancient times, only they glow neon, eat people like candy, and shoot lasers out of their eyes. And just like how in the original game you could open up cages filled with tigers so they clear out outposts for you before you skin them alive like the inhumane murder machine you are, this time around you can hip the heart out of soldiers and throw them into nearby outposts so the blood dragons will laser them out of existence for your convenience, which is a pretty great new use for an already existing mechanic. In terms of weapons, it's mostly the same deal as with many other shooters. You get a pistol, machine gun, shotgun, and so on, but I'm an absolute sucker for when games pick up weapons that in other games are usually mounted or extremely rare, or with extremely limited ammo, and then decide to turn it into a permanently usable, useful weapon. Enter the minigun. Yes, it's overpowered. Yes, you can use it to easily dispatch even tougher enemies, turning the game into a joke, but I don't care. I can play through the entire campaign and more using it, so why the hell shouldn't I go crazy and enjoy myself for once? This, of course, pales in comparison to a mission near the end of the game, where you have to go through a neon temple in order to unlock one of the greatest weapons of all time. Yes, you go through a neon temple killing armed zombies to find a weapon. That's a thing that happens. And when you find it, can you guess what it is? Probably not. I mean, I certainly couldn't without any context. Well, it's the Kill Star, of course. A shuriken that you attach to a robotic arm that then shoots lasers that instantly explode enemies on contact. And I don't even need to explain anything else. I can just let the footage speak for me. The entire game is pretty short though. Running from main mission to main mission, only clearing the outposts between them, took me only 2.5 hours. But it's honestly kind of good that it is so short and just fires off all of its ideas at lightning speed. That way you don't have to go through any bullshit padding and the gameplay doesn't have a chance to get stale, because in the end, no matter how much I praise its craziness, this is still Far Cry 3 with neon lights. So, do I recommend this game? Yes! It's pretty cheap since it's old, but I still recommend you wait for a sale since it offers very little engaging content. Most of it being boring collectibles and outposts scattered around an okay open world that you probably won't spend too much time around beyond the main quest. But if you can get it for dirt cheap, then it is an incredible way to spend an evening. I suppose I could sum up my complex thoughts about it in the following way. Do spend some time with this game, but don't spend so much that the magic fades away. And with that, let's lead right into our next game. Call of Juarez, Gunslinger, is a Wild West arcade-style first-person shooter who probably shouldn't be called an Ubisoft mini-shooter since it was actually developed by Techland, the developers behind all of the other Call of Juarez games. I'm not going to lie, this video wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this game, because Blood Dragon was just something I stuck together with this since I wouldn't have a chance to talk about it otherwise, but this one, oh boy. This one is a masterpiece. If you just wanted to know my opinion about it, then you can close the video right now and go straight to buying it, because all I'm going to do for the rest of this video is praise this thing, which is quite possibly my favorite Western game of all time. Gunslinger puts you in the boots of Silas Greaves, a tough as nails but now retired bounty hunter in the year of 9010 when the Wild West has started to die. He stops at a rusty old saloon in the city of Abilene for a drink when he is approached by a young man who is a fan of his and loves reading dime novels about him. The young man wants to ask him about his exploits and he agrees to tell him about his adventures over some liquor, with the other patrons of the bar also gathering around to hear his tale. This is all a framing device for the game itself, which is split across chapters as Silas recounts his adventures, going after different bounties of which each chapter is usually named after. Now, if I were to lay out the entire plot in simple terms, you would probably think it's nothing special, but the story of Gunslinger actually is quite special, and that is because of the way it is presented. Silas is constantly narrating over gameplay actions, and his narration actually affects the way levels play out. His storytelling isn't perfect or linear, so you play through a sequence only for Silas to comment how dumb it would be if he actually did that, and then time rewinds and you take another route. Or planks and corpses will literally fall out of the sky as Silas mentions he noticed them as the story goes on. It adds a layer of fun unpredictability to every single chapter, and the changes just go crazier and crazier the more the game goes on. As for the story on its own, the foreshadowing is top-notch. Just try replaying the game and you notice all sorts of little details building up to the game's final reveal, and it's impossible to not take seriously the gravity of the finale when all of the cards are on the table and Silas' motivations are clearly laid out. It is a very cleverly structured plot, even if it's not the most original one around. The style of the world is also very interesting. It has an over-exaggerated comic book style with its vibrant colors and flying splatters of cherry-colored blood, and the boss characters even downright have their own comic book-inspired intros as well, but the characters aren't rendered in a cel-shaded or simplistic aesthetic. Instead they go for a realistic look, or as realistic as they could get on a 360 era indie budget, which creates a striking look that makes the game's art style look very appealing and help with its arcade ambitions since the enemies are easily identifiable, while remaining grounded enough to tell a hard-boiled classic western tale. The gameplay itself, as expected of an arcade-like game, is pretty simple, so simple in fact you only get 3 guns. The revolver, the rifle, and the shotgun, as well as some sticks of dynamite as a grenade to round up your arsenal. The revolver is your middle-range solution, usable in all situations, but not packing the biggest firepower around. The shotgun is your short-range solution, taking some time to reload and useless at long range, but absolutely annihilating everything at short range. The rifle is used for long-range attacks. It does damage at short ranges as well, but it's too slow compared to the revolver for it to become your weapon of choice in those situations. And dynamite is dynamite. You throw it, it blows up. Of course, if you're the kind of person who thinks 2 is better than 1, you can also dual wield your revolvers for extra damage, but you do need to choose if you prefer to stay at a long range or a short range, since you can only carry the rifle or the shotgun at any given time. You always carry your revolvers regardless of situation to guarantee you always have a way out. Now, I prefer games with a lot of weapon variety, but it is important to understand what a game wants to accomplish within its framework before judging it. More isn't necessarily better, and Gunslinger, which aims for an arcade feel, understands that. Each weapon fills a specific role the developers intended them to, while giving you a little breathing room to develop your own playstyle based on your own preferred range of engagement. To those who wish to sink their fangs a little deeper though, the good news is that there is also a skill tree system in place. By now you might have noticed the numbers and special titles flying off near enemies when they're killed. Normally in an arcade type game you'd imagine those would be points to add to a high score, and while that's not necessarily wrong, here they serve a different purpose. They are XP you get to level up your skills when your level up bar is full. The more skillful your kills, the faster you level up. When you gain a level, you can at any point press U to pause the game and select a skill from 3 different trees: a short range, a medium range, and a long range skill tree. And when you reach the middle point and the last point of each tree, you unlock a new weapon variation. Throughout all of the trees, you unlock different versions of the revolver, which you'll find during levels to switch things up a bit. But there is only one new version of both the rifle and the shotgun, which are essentially the same weapon but simply better, so you simply start carrying them the moment you get the upgrade. Also, all upgrades apply to all weapons, even those outside of the skill tree, so for example, if you get the upgrade where mashing R reloads your weapon faster on the long range skill tree, you'll still be able to mash for both revolvers and shotguns instead of only the rifle. So it pays to pay attention to these details as you go through the trees, and it also pays to focus on the tree of your favorite playstyle, since you won't get near enough points to fill all of them by the end of your playthrough. That's not everything you need to keep in mind though, for there are two meters that can alter your experience. The first one is the sense of death ability. When the sense of death meter is full, whatever bullet would kill you will instead set the road in slow motion, giving you a chance to dodge the bullet and recover some health. And yes, that always looks really cool. And there is also the concentration mode bar, which allows you to manually enter slow motion so you can deliver lots of deadly shots in sequence, which is great both for when you're trying to kill a group of enemies, as well as for when a mid-boss tier enemy enters the scene, since you can quickly dispatch them with a series of quick shots to the head. And outside of the main gameplay loop, sometimes when you come across a particularly tough guy, you engage them on a duel. During duels, time slows down and you must control your focus and your hand position to narrow your aim and to pull out your gun as fast as possible when it comes time to fire, with additional gimmicks showing up later depending on who you are dueling against. You can pull out your gun as soon as you hear your heartbeat, but pulling out your gun before your opponent gives you a dishonorable stamp on your duel, which reduces the XP gained on them, because let's face it, you're kind of being a piece of shit. Duels are super cool and I quite like. When it comes to first-person shooters, they don't have as good of a track record with boss battles as, say, platformers, since a lot of the time they're just shoot it till it dies with bullet sponges, so it's nice to see a good way to spice up things while keeping it in the traditions of good old western movies. It's also a good thing that the game is so short, since I could see them becoming very repetitive in a longer game, but given they mixed it with traditional boss encounters in a short romp, they actually fit in perfect. When it comes to levels, the levels are as great as you might have expected from a tightly focused arcade design philosophy. Every little bit of them matters, and they are set up in a way that can quickly get you from shootout to shootout, with a few nooks and crannies hidden off the beaten path that sometimes contains nuggets of truth, which are collectibles that give you XP, and also a card with a description of a character, concept or location from the Wild West, as well as all of the historical accurate facts about them that the developers could research, which clearly shows how much love and care they put into researching what they put in the game. I also want to give a quick shout out to whoever in the dev team loves trains as much as I do, because there are 3 train levels in this game. One in a broken train, one underneath the train rails of a wooden bridge, and another on an actual moving train, and all 3 of them are played in sequence one after the other, so we clearly have a man of culture here who understands the coolest things about the Wild West are clearly the train heists. The game is, for better or worse, pretty short. I finished it in 4 hours, but thankfully the devs added a few extra modes to extend the longevity of the game. Once you beat the game for the first time, you unlock the hardest difficulty level and New Game Plus. There you can begin the game all over again with all of your current skills to give you a chance to upgrade them even more, as well as to take on a higher difficulty level with more skills if you need a clutch to help. Then there is also arcade mode, which consists of remixed levels, but you don't get to carry your skills, rather you get to choose between 3 different predefined setups and off you go trying to get the high score. And then there's duels mode, which is where you get 5 lives to try to get through as many duels as possible in sequence. Naturally, no game is perfect, and unfortunately I do think this one has a pretty big flaw, and that is the use of regenerating health. While there is nothing necessarily wrong with regenerating health, the problem is that this isn't a Hollywood-style military shooter. Even if it is inspired by Hollywood Wild West movies, this is very much an arcade-like experience, and I feel like health packs or snake oil or something would have fit in better, since you'd be keeping up the fast pace of going forward killing enemies in the hopes of getting more health while dodging bullets. But instead here, the enemies can knock the wind out of you in a few shots, and they can hit you from 100 meters away using the smallest of holes, which means, naturally, you want to spend a lot of time hiding behind cover rather than going guns blazing, which can hamper the breezy feeling the otherwise arcade level design gives in the game's best moments. Now, that's not to say you are not supposed to go fast, since arcade mode does rank you by time to completion for each level, but all that means is that you have to abuse concentration mode and spot your enemy before he spots you. So don't go in expecting too many bullet dodging sequences. Most of the time getting in cover is the order of the day. Look, the bottom line for Juarez Gunslinger is that it is an excellent shooter that any fan of arcade-like games is going to enjoy, and that I'd recommend to basically anyone who likes first-person shooters, and honestly I think every person who likes the Wild West should try out at least once. Basically everyone. Do you like video games? You're going to like this video game, and I'd argue as a budget title, that it is worth full price, but I understand that if you're planning to go through it only once, the short campaign and the price might be a deterrent, so I recommend you at least try to catch it on sale and give it a try, because it is definitely worth it. So in the end, was I wrong? Yes, absolutely, duh, no shit. I already said in the beginning of the video that I was completely wrong. And you probably already noticed, just take a look at your online storefront and see if you get more mini shooters. You don't get more mini shooters. Ubisoft tried again with stuff like Far Cry Primal and Far Cry New Dawn, but those were more fully fledged price shooters because greed knows no bounds, and this AA indie market remains untapped by AAA studios. Sometimes they do little experiments, but most of the time they just publish little experiments whenever they feel like it. They don't have smaller divisions. Everyone is after the microtransaction bug, like I said. But hey, being wrong is not always bad, you know? It's a good thing that the AAA market didn't completely dominate all of the markets, including the indie one, and left no space for anybody else, and just kept pumping out small games to propagate their big franchises even further. No, what happened was much more exciting. Indie development tools keep getting easier and easier and more accessible every day, and now we get fully fledged games like Dusk, a Medieval, Ultra Kill, which is in early access, but you know, anything by New Blood really. Just take a look at that. Those are fully fledged 100% shooters that have as much content as you want from a fully fledged game, and they are being sold for the same price or cheaper than Juarez Gunslinger or Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon were being sold at their release dates. And that's exciting. And there will always be space for mini shooters like Desync and High Hell, you know, on the indie market. It's not like the mini shooter, like a contained small shooter went away. They just became the domain of the indies as well, and that's good, because independent companies, independent producers, independent developers, by which I mean sometimes they are not technically independent, they are published, but you know what I mean, the small developers, it's good that they have all these tools. It's good that they are the one dominating this market, because these are the ones that are going to bring back what we loved from old shooters and bring in new things for us to begin to love, and not the big companies. Not that big companies can't make good games, I already reviewed plenty of games from big companies that I love in this channel, but it's good that complete nobodies can get their hands on tools and find their way to success that is just as big, if not bigger, than big AAA titles. Yeah, that's not impossible. Just take a look at Undertale and its current cultural relevance. But anyway, this is Penguin Overdrive, signing off and remembering you that you don't need 300 guns or a bloated world map to be a good shooter and to be an accessible shooter and to be a cheap shooter. And I completely forgot what point I was going to make with this video, and I have no idea how to end it.